Hi everyone, how's it going? Today's video is about Arix Ordragc, a red Western warrior dragon. I know you're going to love this one, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Species, Western dragon. Sex, male. Age, not given. He's any age you'd like him to be. Height and weight, 5'10" and 150 pounds. Abilities, combat and fire breathing. Children, none. Arix is a Western dragon who has had to take a subtly different life path from other dragons of his species. Where other dragons are able to cast magic, he is magicless. Instead, he taught himself to become a warrior, with a focus on being a protector. Dragons lay eggs, typically between 1 and 3, all of which usually hatch. The parents don't wait for them to hatch, and the offspring raise themselves from birth. However, it must be understood that this is natural for dragons. Their offspring are developed enough by the time of their hatching that they don't need their parents' nurturing in order to survive. Many dragons can remember some detail of their hatching, however, these memories can be patchy. Although dragons have surnames, they usually name themselves rather than keep the same one for multiple generations. Often they only give themselves surnames to fit in with the naming conventions of other species. It can be difficult on a logistical level to get through life without a surname, after all. Now, on to Arix's backstory. Like most dragons, Arix didn't know his parents. This is not a problem to him in and of itself, however, he has had some issues with trust and confidence stemming from a need for extra help when he was a hatchling as, unlike other dragons, he was born without the ability to use magic. When he was first born and began to explore the world beyond his nest, he had a few rough experiences. The world felt a little too tough to survive in. Although, of course, survive he did. He'd hatched among his siblings and they'd dissipated within minutes of crawling free of their shells, so as such, he wished they'd stayed together to face early threats as a team. This feeling of isolation and its associated powerlessness made him angry, and he didn't really let go of that until he reached adulthood. In humans, trust is a deep, often unspoken emotion built during that most instinctive, raw, intensely vulnerable time of life when they've just been born and can't do anything for themselves, even the things that must be done to sustain their own lives. Since human babies need to be fed, protected, emotionally regulated and kept clean, they form attachments with their mothers that can potentially be broken. If this break happens, the emotions felt by the infants are brutal. By contrast, dragons are already quite self-sufficient by the time they're born, so have never been through a time when they were highly dependent on another. As a result, Arix's early trust issues were not as terribly deep-rooted as a human hearing this story might expect. Arix never gained the ability to use magic after he was born, but did not receive any extra help in learning how to live as a magicless dragon. Most dragons can conjure lightning, shape the earth and themselves, or perform acts of healing, as well as breathe fire. Arix can only breathe fire. Early on, this affected his self-trust as he saw himself as less able to cope with danger or other challenges than his peers, and this one-downness was unpleasant for him to cope with. Therefore, in an act of emotional self-preservation, he turned his opinion onto others, seeing them as the ones in a one-down position instead. Arix found this emotionally easier to deal with, but it had a further isolating effect on him. A while after this, he began to reconsider this position and decided instead that he would be honest with himself, that he felt weaker than his peers, and make himself stronger. He chose to specialize in physical combat as a substitute for wielding magic. His decision to find another way to be strong rather than simply bemoan his lack of magic is a clear sign of his fundamentally solid sense of trust, and shows that as painful as his initial feelings of lack of self-trust were, they were not all pervading in a way that humans would understand it. Notably, this stage is the stage in which a human first develops the ability to choose their actions. They begin to consciously control their muscles so they can make small choices about what they do or don't do. Since dragons are self-sufficient from birth, and conscious movement is part of that self-sufficiency, the concept of autonomy is second nature to a dragon. They don't have to learn it in the way humans do, and as such they appear impressively confident in their autonomy. In fact, their autonomy, their freedom to choose, is such a fundamental assumption to a dragon that when it's taken away, it bothers them a great deal. Another side to this is that while for humans their initial choices are about clenching or unclenching muscles, they can choose to hold on or let go, for dragons their initial muscle control is already more sophisticated than that, so they have a higher threshold that needs to be reached before they feel powerless. Like I said before, Arix chose to specialize in non-magical combat. More specifically, he chose to be a protector, initially of his friends. On the note of friends, as he started to explore the idea of being a warrior, his relationships with others began to improve. Although this was an uphill struggle at first, as Arix had much to learn about himself, conflict, and interdependency. His sense of autonomy is most affected when he doesn't have the ability to win. This is where his rationality is challenged. In other words, the felt need to be autonomous is historic rather than rational, so when he can't win, he feels that more than just the prize he has been fighting for has been lost. When he loses, he feels personally diminished and the loss or defeat stays on his mind for a long time. There are variations within this. He doesn't like losing a tournament but sees a loss as a challenge to improve, and he will have made peace with such a loss by the end of the day. If a failure is his fault, then he'll feel worse than if there was nothing he could have done. Arix's relationship with autonomy is a little shakier than for some other dragons due to his being magicless. In his early years of being a warrior, this led to him over-demonstrating his strengths as a warrior and over-protecting his friends. Later, when he learned more about being a warrior and what it means to have that kind of strength, he resolved these feelings and his friends and enemies could afford to relax around him more. Perhaps because of the solid relationship with autonomy, current-day Arix is not cruel. Cruelty is often a response to uncertainty, of the need to eliminate competition or to disproportionately punish wrongdoers. Since Arix feels very strongly that he has control over himself, and outside influences to a fairly strong degree, he doesn't feel a need to overcompensate or to dwell. Again, it's only when his considerable strength is overwhelmed by circumstance or oversight that he doubts himself. And then he usually responds nowadays with the desire to do better. Despite all of this, he does have an awareness that even as a dragon warrior, he has limits and can't realistically expect himself to be all-powerful. He has made peace with this. Overall, Arix is a big-picture thinker and less consumed with fine details, although it should be stated that he's not a keen planner. His big-picture thinking is more about his unworried approach to events as they happen rather than about future plans. What makes him more of a big-picture thinker than not is the fact that he trusts that he'll be able to handle a situation when he gets to it without worrying about the fine details of how. Arix loves acknowledgement. It reminds him that he's capable, and as I said before, that's important to most dragons, also for Arix considering his lack of magic. He doesn't go out of his way to seek praise, but very much enjoys it when he gets it. For him, the praise is more genuine when it's spontaneous. Arix Arix was always enthusiastic about exerting his will, and that's what ambition's all about. In his early years as a warrior, he protected his friends, which he always considered an important part of the warrior code. However, he protected them out of a sense that they belonged to him. In later years, he changed his stance on this and instead protected them because of his association with them. Part of his initial approach to protection was to do with an excessive need to exert his will. His friends were his and couldn't be taken away from him. Because Arix felt a strong need to prove himself among his magic brethren during his early years, he tended to berate himself a lot when he failed. As a young dragon, that was the only way he knew to motivate himself to improve. However, over time he picked up a friend here and a friend there, and came to the attention of acquaintances who saw that he needed help to find his footing in life. Over time, various individuals taught him a little about what it is to feel secure and safe, how it feels to be accepted and the responsibility to accept others, that he was valued and that others had qualities that deserved to be valued too, and much more. As time passed, Arix came to realize that he didn't have to be alone, and that if he trusted in others, who'd proven that they deserved to be trusted, and reaped the rewards of that trust, then he was stronger and happier for it. Over the years, Arix came to fulfill his ambitions. They were never very grand. All he wanted was to be seen and remembered as a hero, and in his older years he felt that he had achieved this. For humans, this stage, the stage of older childhood, is one where their training begins in earnest. Because baby dragons are left to make their own way in the world, they're not schooled. Since Arix was unable to cast magic, he learned to fight physically instead. He never received formal training to be a warrior, and mostly learned the necessary skills from experience and by watching and emulating others. As he grew older, he set himself a schedule to learn more efficiently and in a more structured way. He still did not seek or receive tutoring from anyone else. In any case, he preferred to learn by doing far more than by listening to theory. Arix has his own approach to cooperation. Since he's had to be very independent, he prefers to have the final say about what he does, even if it's as part of a team effort so that he doesn't have to give up any of the autonomy he's come to value so much. As a young dragonlet, he begrudged listening to the plans of others and would cooperate only until he saw what looked like a better way. As he grew older, he improved a little in this regard. He still prefers to do things his own way, but now he's happy to communicate his thoughts on how to improve plans. This comes from a place of wanting to have agency in everything he does rather than being passionate about planning, so he only tends to take this much interest in planning if somebody else presents a plan first. Arix has come to develop good social skills, although he's not overly socially inclined. He's friendly without being outgoing and will engage in idle chats, but usually won't be the one who starts the conversation. At least not if it's with someone he doesn't know. He's similarly casual about his professional life. He's happy to work as part of a team and gets on well with just about anyone he's part of a team with. He follows the same trend when it comes to intimate relationships. He doesn't feel a need to commit to anyone and doesn't feel a great need to seek out female companionship. However, the mood to be more intimate can strike, and when it does, he's happy to indulge with a willing partner. Arix loves what he does and doesn't want to retire. He doesn't have children, so doesn't feel a personal need to pass on responsibilities to the next generation. However, he is occasionally approached by somebody who wants him to mentor them. Overall, as far as Arix is concerned, there's always more to learn, and he's more interested in continuing to develop his own skills. Arix isn't anywhere near this stage of his life yet, but as this stage is about feeling satisfaction with a life well lived, it can at least be said that he doesn't worry about feeling dissatisfied when he reaches the end of his life. That when he does, he will have spent it doing what he loved and left his mark on the world while doing it. Arix is a high-functioning character, especially by a human's standards. He looked after himself from birth, all but taught himself a dangerous trade through trial, error and observation alone, and became an effective and sought-after professional in his chosen field. He never wanted much from his life, nor riches, nor fame, nor immortality. But what he wanted was a satisfying life, and that's what he's got. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe, and if you're up for it, leave a comment and share. It all helps me out, so I'd appreciate it a lot. This video was made as a commission, and if you'd like a commission like this for yourself, why not email me on thecharacterconsultancy@gmail.com. There's a price list in the description below. You can also find all the credits for everybody who's contributed to this video. All the artists, the musicians, and the other characters who've shown up alongside Arix. I'd also like to say thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. Your support is incredibly valuable to me, so thank you everyone. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Goodbye!